It's important to set yourself goals. One of my goals is to create a useful website. Something that people will find purpose for. And it gives me opportunity to tinker around with a certain set of skills that I used to use quite a lot when I was at university and really don't anymore. And I was looking through and working on the pros and cons pop-ups for my tier list 5 or 6 days ago. And I was going down and I was looking at all of the different games and thinking, I need to do something about the games that I haven't made maps for. Because whilst you can click on any of these to open up the Google Drive with a map, or in some cases multiple maps, there are certain games which I haven't mapped that are high up there in my tier list. And Axiom Verge is one of those. And it's one of those because the game came out in 2015. It's well before, just like Ori in the Blind Forest, though I have been back and mapped Ori in the Blind Forest. Axiom Verge is one of those games that has already got loads of maps. You know, there are multiple maps, grid maps, image maps. There's loads of maps. But there's one kind of map that isn't available. Now, I personally find this particular map, the ultimate Axiom Verge map, really interesting. Because I don't know how this has been put together. If I had to hazard a guess, they have gone through and they have screenshotted all the rooms and they've shrunk it down so that one 16 by 16 pixel tile is just 1 pixel on this map. And I find it interesting because in order to have done this, they have to have screenshotted and put together a composite map. But no matter what I do, no matter how I search, the only composite map of screenshots that I can find for Axiom Verge is purely of the first area. And it's very nice. It's a very nice map indeed, but it's only of the first area. So I got myself to thinking. I was wondering, why? Why has nobody made a full screenshot composite map of Axiom Verge? It's surely the kind of game that would benefit from it. It's the kind of game with a particular aesthetic. There's loads of maps with the kind of, is it 8-bit or 16-bit? I can never remember whichever it is. There's maps of Symphony of the Night that have made with screenshots and so on and so forth. Why does Axiom Verge not have one? So I started looking into it. And initially, I just decided to go through and take some screenshots. So that is what I did. I played on a fresh save, and after about 5 hours of total time, including 2 hours of my actual save file, this is what I got. It's a bit shrunk down because this is just something that I posted in the Discord. I don't actually have a proper version of this. But it is literally just me taking screenshots. It's got the weapons and the minimap in the corner, it's got the health bar in the other corner, it's got the enemies on, it's got the player on wherever they are, and I just started piecing it together to see how long this would take. And of course, if you know Axiom Verge, you'll know that actually this is the first area, this is part of, but certainly not all of, the second area, and that took 5 hours. And then my game crashed and I lost the save. The save just reverted back to a fresh save, new save file. Yeah, wasn't really fancying doing that again. Posted a really salty message in the Discord and went to do a little bit of research into, well, what cheat engines tables were available and so on and so forth, because I've played the game, I've completed the game. I'm not playing it again for completion's sake. I'm playing it for mapping's sake. What can I do? Are there any cheat tables? Is there any way of removing the UI? What kind of stuff is there? And I found a cheat engine table that didn't work, and absolutely nothing in terms of mods except a speedrun stuff and a randomizer thing, which ended up getting baked into the actual game because, as I said, the game is quite old now. So I got this map, but you know me, I am a stubborn man. So I stuck at it. I didn't keep track initially of how long I was spending on things, but I sorted out the initial area. I couldn't face going down below, so I just went kind of acrossways, and then I did a loop, and then I carried on, and I got to this area and I thought, I begin to see why people might not have screenshotted this map. Because as well as there being a UI that you can't get rid of, there are also some really, really big, sizable rooms with a load of parallax. And if you've ever tried stitching together screenshots of a game with a lot of parallax, you will know that it is not a good time at all. Nevertheless, I persevered. We went upwards. We got to the final zone of the game. I tried my best to sort out the final boss room, which is a bit of a mess. So far, realistically, I hadn't encountered anything that was giving me massive headaches, but even just looking at these rooms was starting to give me kind of pause. We continued onwards, finally looping around the bottom, and I did start mapping out some of the fast travel route, but again, that is just one long massive room that covers the width of the map to an extent, and that was kind of putting me off. I was thinking, I don't know whether this is going to be a particularly fun experience, but things are shaping up. So we've gone from that, which I actually haven't shown you, have I? That was my initial map before I decided to have a go at the screenshot map. That, then that, then that, then that, and then, in between this and this, I discovered something wonderful. There's a little game that you may or may not be aware of called Stardew Valley. I've never played it, but it's made in the old kind of monogame XMB framework, which Axiom Verge also happens to be made in. And I discovered that if I use a certain kind of unpacker, I can unpack the XMB files from Axiom Verge, and it converts them into two formats: a PNG and I'm going to have to check, a PNG and a YAML file for each thing. And you can edit these PNGs and then repack them. So what I was able to do is open up the UI files for Axiom Verge, the things that make the little frame for the health bar and the weapon icons and the minimap icons, and I could make some of them transparent just by deleting the graphics. Not deleting the file, but deleting the actual artwork within the file and leaving it transparent. And that meant that rather than having a massively growing health bar, I could kind of get rid of it, but not quite. There's still a little bit because some of it's made with shaders. And instead of having that weapon icon in the corner, if I delete the weapon icons from the files and I delete the frames from the files, it doesn't show up. The minimap is still there, but it doesn't have the frame. I don't know why you can't get rid of the minimap. I couldn't find the little minimap files in the game files unless they're hidden really well. So I think they must be kind of dynamically created with shaders or something like that as the game plays. And I had an idea. With some of these rooms with massive amounts of parallax, what happens if I, rather than having the backgrounds a mess like this, what happens if I mess around with the files? And we ended up with this. So I was able, in some of these locations that I was really worried about mapping out, you can actually turn some of the graphics pink or green or whatever. You can just paint over them and repack them. So rather than having to deal with 4 different layers of parallax, which this room happens to have, might even be 5, I can make several of the layers just completely invisible by deleting the kind of stuff within the image file, and I could turn the actual background thing, that kind of tiles, pink. And by doing that, that means that at a later time I would be able to overlay something onto that pink in the same way that you chroma key out a green screen or something like that. So yeah, I used green for that room because it was quite red, and yeah, it was working okay. Those of you who've been to this particular zone know that there's actually a load of bubbles and stuff, and I don't know how the bubbles are being done. There's something in the sprite sheet for it, but also some kind of transparency shader is at work. So rather than just deleting the bubbles and them being gone, it still kind of showed some of them, so I had to clean that up. But yeah, that was the first moment that I was really like, oh, this is doable. This is doable without being the biggest headache in the world for the parallax. Or so I thought. I think. Yeah. So this is the map 99% complete. There's a little nub in the bottom left hand corner that I'd missed. But essentially, that is the map of Axiom Verge in a very rough state. So I started filling things in. I made things much more pink so that I could unify them and make it easier to do bits and pieces. And then I've started filling out parallax with proper things. I've also started filling out some of the rooms and so on and so forth. And then I went back and redid the ones in the middle because they were a bit of a mess. So to show you what I mean, here is the top kind of corner zones with the layering done. So all of the parallax has been completely removed, and I've overlaid several things using the pink or the green in this particular case to mask the area that I want to layer stuff in. And I think it looks pretty decent. So let's take stock. This was at 5 worth of hours. 5 worth of hours, yes. This is what I'd achieved by 28.5 hours. I actually started keeping track at that point. And this is where I stand right now. At 42 hours, we are getting there. At this stage, why is this taking so long? Well, because I have to get rid of what remains of the UI. Let's zoom in, because this is the actual file. So let's make it 1 for 1. So you'll see that in the starter area, there's no UI. Apart from that little bit there, which I will fix. Damn it. There's always something that I spot whenever I'm recording video. So there's almost no UI. There's no traces of our main character. There are no enemies. Apart from these things, because I like the look of them and I think they add kind of an ambience to the room. But there's no UI. And there's no player. And to do this, I had to go through and, well, first of all, tile over with the actual tiles from the sprite sheets the minimap bits. Let me show you what the minimap currently looks like, because there'll be some bits of it. Yeah. So this is what it's left with. This zone I haven't done yet. So you'll see there's the player, there's this little thing, the minimap without a frame, and there's this little bit here which is part of the health bar, which I can't seem to get rid of. So anytime there's one room, I've tried to get rid of them as I go, but I decided far too late that I didn't want the player on. So that left me with some unfortunate choices. Would I just try and paint it out? No. So in the end, what did I do? On my endgame file, I deleted the sprites for the main character, thus making them invisible. And then I went back to the first zone, and wherever I could see the main character, I took a screenshot with my invisible character and just pasted a bit over it to get rid of him. That took a while, as you can imagine. But at this stage, we have got the first zone complete, the second zone complete, including I've had to try and fill out some things because you can't reach them actually in the game to the best of my knowledge. So we've got the first zone complete, the second zone complete, we haven't got the third zone or the fourth zone, and I've just finished redoing the fast travel zone. The fast travel zone's interesting because it's really straightforward in game, but in the map it doesn't actually link up properly. So I've had to do a little bit of jiggery pokery in places to get the ends of the map, to get the doors on the map lining up. But if you take a look at this, I think the parallax turned out quite nicely thanks to my pink room, and same goes for this. I think this looks really quite nice. A little bit of a gradient, a little bit of transparencies. It's all working quite well. I'm not looking forward to doing those rooms. So yes, I am now over. Oh, I've just redone these rooms as well. I had to remake her sprite from scratch. That took a while. I'm not necessarily quite happy with these backgrounds. They're close enough, but they're not quite there. See what I mean about the transparency on these little bubbles? I'm sure there must be something that I can do about that. But yeah, some of these are looking a little bit rubbish, if I'm honest, where you've got weird background textures. Most of the time I can work around it, but these weird horseshoe ones are a bit of a pain. But yeah, that is where I'm at so far after 42 hours. If I'd realised this was going to take so long, I would have done a little kind of devlog project style thing where I kept you up to date with the trials and tribulations of the various zones that I'm struggling with. I did actually put together a working document. So these are some of the concessions that I've had to make in order to get just get a map that looks decent working. So the parallax scrolling backgrounds, original backgrounds removed. Therefore, whilst these might look quite pretty, in my opinion, they're not accurate. You know, the placement of the clouds, the placement of the things, they're just there for aesthetic reasons. They're not accurate to the actual game. I've already talked about the HUD and how I've been tiling over things. I've had to kind of fill out some rooms that you couldn't get to. Fast travel room has been completely reshaped in the ends. Doorways don't line up properly, so I've had to mess with some of those. If you are very familiar with Axiom Verge, you'll probably be able to spot where I've done things. If you're not super familiar, you probably won't notice. Laser barriers, I'm trying to keep reset, but I need to double check those. I flip-flopped towards the start of the game as to whether things like these breakable blocks should be left in. I figured if they were obvious ones out in the open, I should leave them in. But if they're hidden ones, like there are here for example, then I'll break them. And when I actually get round to putting the stuff on, for turning this picture into an actual map, I'll probably highlight breakable blocks and stuff like that. I had originally planned to leave enemies on, changed my mind with that. That was a time costly mistake. I don't yet know what I'm doing with the bosses. This room I've had to reconstruct because obviously at a certain point she disappears from here, so I couldn't redo that properly. There are bosses in places, but not all of them currently, and I don't know what I'm going to do about the hallucination sequence that you get to, because there's technically two versions of this section of the zone. Or actually it's just this section, isn't it? So yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I might do what this map did and do a separate section up here. I don't know, but there we go. That is my journey through mapping Axiom Verge so far. I've still got... I've done those 6 zones. So I've got zones 3, 4 and 9. So 3 is here. 4 is this one here. As I said, because I decided that I was going to get rid of Trace a little bit too late, I was getting rid of some of them as I went. So rooms like this aren't so bad, but there are a couple of places. This one I hadn't decided by that point. Yeah, there's a couple of places where he's still there. So I need to go through and get rid of him. Need to go through and get rid of the UI. But I think I'm probably gonna do zone 9 next, because I think it's... Is it smaller? It's got a lot of rooms that I've already been able to finish because they've just got black backgrounds. But yeah, I've got to get rid of. Got to get rid of him and get rid of the map, the mini map and the UI. It's 42 hours so far. I can see why nobody has put out a proper composite. No, nobody has, to the best of my knowledge, put out a proper composites for this game. This 10 years old game at this point. So once I've got the background done, I will put out a version of it just as is. Yeah, I'm going to put on all the power-ups and stuff, the notes and so on and so forth in the right places, and I will release that as is. And then I will turn it into an actual map guide of the kind that I have done before, with text on, with bigger, more standout icons, with all the breakable passages and this, that and the other more clearly marked on. In fact, I will probably end up doing something that's a bit like this, where they've marked on specific types of passage and so on and so forth. This is a really good map. This is a really, really good map. You know, I like this a lot. I wish I'd had this actually when I played through Axiom Verge, but I don't think this had been released at this point. 42 hours and counting. I will let you know, or maybe I'll even do another devlog if I run into any problems or if I find anything interesting that I want to talk about. But I wanted to talk about the project because people ask me, Dema, how do you make these maps? Is it complicated? Does it take a long time? Not usually this long, no. But whenever you're making a map for a game that is in a bit of an unusual engine, you know, making a composite map like this in Unity, really easy. Well, time consuming, but easy. Making something like this in Unreal Engine, also reasonably easy. Not as easy as Unity, but reasonably easy. Making a map like this in Game Maker Studio 2, really easy, because you can actually see the room data in the program that I've got, and you can just stitch them together, like I did with, was it Guns of Fury? It was Guns of Fury, wasn't it? Yeah. Thanks for watching, folks. I will let you know when this is ready for public consumption. Not there yet. Clearly, lots to do yet, but the backdrop for it is almost done. I then need to go, of course, and find out where all the things go to the pixel, because they're not on here. You know, there's a few places where there's an egg or whatever, but most of the time, you know, the power-ups aren't on here because I've already collected them. You know, I think this is the room with the lab coat, isn't it, or one of the lab coats. It's not on here because it's already been collected, so I've got to go through and find all that out. Now I know it is marked on this map. You know, you can see where things are, but yeah, that's still going to take some time, and there's still the possibility that I want to do this one as well. This obviously is the actual thing won't have the glitchy effect. That was just for a teaser thing. But this is obviously Axiom Verge, but in the style of Blasphemous map. Because this took me a while to do as well. This is probably 5 hours or so of work. Shouldn't let that go to waste. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Stay fabulous. I'm going to go and rest now. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.